Well, hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the first Pittsfield Composting in Pittsfield webinar. Your three facilitators today are all founding members, myself, Kathy Riley. Oh, you can change the screen, Mary. And my picture is the lower left one on the screen. Mary Stucklin will be the main moderator, and you'll find her picture in the upper right corner of the screen. And Karen Roach's picture is just below Mary's. You'll get to see Karen in action and her helpers assembling the new age home compost bin in her yard, and hear her narrate that section of the webinar. And we're grateful to be collaborating with the sponsors of this event, Berkshire Zero Waste, Berkshire Environmental Action Team, and the Giving Garden. Take it away, Mary.
Hi, everybody. So just a little bit of housekeeping for the webinar. As you can see on your screen, there are some arrows at the bottom that are going to point you to some key tools that you're going to want to use for your viewing experience. The green arrow is pointing towards the mute or unmute button. We ask that you remain muted for the portion of the webinar that you don't have any questions. If you do have any questions, you can put them into the chat box, which is the purple arrow. So you can enter in your questions in the chat. You can also, we're pretty relaxed here at Pittsfield Compost. We're just a group of local volunteers. So, you know, if you want to unmute yourself and just say, hi, my name is Joe and I have a question, you know, we're totally welcome any random questions throughout the webinar. The pink arrow is pointing towards your video. You do not need to have your video on. You can turn it off if you'd like. If at any point the Zoom meeting gets too busy, we may turn off some videos just so that we can streamline the viewing of the webinar for everybody. The blue arrow is pointing towards the poll option. If you accidentally close out of a poll and want to answer, you can click that button there and rejoin the poll. And at the orange arrow, you can leave the meeting at any time. Don't worry, it says end meeting there. You will not end the meeting for all of us. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. So actually, we have some introductory questions for everybody. So the first question is, do you currently compost at home? Our options are, I haven't, but I will now. I've tried it before, but need help. Yes, I do, or I do not, but I want to learn more. So just giving another couple seconds there for a couple more votes to go in. All right, we'll see what the answers are like at the end of the webinar. So for right now, we have some of our participants have tried it before but need some help, and someone hasn't, but they want to learn more, which is great. That's the whole reason why we're hosting this webinar, is because we know that people need help, have questions, they don't know how to make sure it's successful, avoid certain, pains of composting. So we hope we can answer those questions for you. We have a second introductory question, which is testing your knowledge of what can go in a compost bin. And don't worry if you don't know for sure, just choose as many as you think are correct. What do you think is compostable? Fruit and veggie scraps, eggshells, coffee grounds, plastic packaging with food inside, meat and dairy, bread and cooked food. So we will ask this question or a similar question to this at the end to see if we've gotten a little bit better as far as our knowledge goes, or if we remain the same, if we were all knowledgeable from the beginning. So it looks like out of the people who responded to the poll, many people agree that fruit and veggie scraps, eggshells, and coffee grounds can go into your compost. And then we have one person who also thinks that bread and cooked food can go in, but for the most part, people understand that plastic packaging and meat and dairy do not go in your compost bin. So anyway, so we'll come back to the polling in at the end of the webinar. So to get started, I just wanted to review some of the reasons why Pittsfield Compost actually started, became a group in Pittsfield. So in the city of Pittsfield, and if you don't live in Pittsfield, that's okay. This could actually be useful information for you as well. In the city of Pittsfield, the taxpayers have to pay for their trash through their taxes. And if we're not including the cost for the actual garbage trucks picking up the trash, the cost for burning trash at the incinerator on Hubbard Ave is about $86.10 a ton, which equals to $1.28 million a year just to burn the trash. If you see on the right, there's this is a what they call a waste audit pie chart. About 31% of an average trash can or a ton of garbage is made up of organic material such as food waste or yard waste, all of which can be composted. So if you think of it like this, if everybody in the city of Pittsfield that used the city trash service composted, the city would save almost $400,000 a year. Now that's a significant, there's, over 17,000 people, households that use the service. So that's a big ask, but we have to start somewhere. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how much money is actually being spent on incinerating organic material in the city of Pittsfield. So the reason why we think composting is such a great solution to this problem, to throwing away, to reusing our food waste, is because it's a circular system. So we actually have the ability to enjoy our watermelon during the summer. We can use the watermelon rind that is left over, put it in our compost. We bring it outside to our compost bin. We have decomposers like worms that break it down into black gold, which we can then use to put in our raised beds like Shauna, or we can use it to fertilize our lawns. We can even donate it to a local garden, a church garden, or maybe even a farm. And then voila, we have food grown in beautiful soil that we can eat, compost, and it goes round and round again. So when we're actually talking about food waste and composting is not the number one thing you want to try to do in order to reduce your food waste. The first thing that you want to try to do is try not to bring it home if you don't think you're going to eat it. So if you've never had, for example, dragon fruit before, dragon fruit is a delicious fruit, but it looks kind of funny. So if you've never had it before, don't buy 10 right off the bat, because it's possible that you might not enjoy that fruit. So let's try to reduce our wasted food first by perhaps not purchasing it if we're not completely ready to eat all of it. Next is we can donate excess food. We have mostly non-perishable items can be donated to food banks, etc. But it's possible that if you go apple picking and you're not going to eat all of the apples, perhaps a neighbor could use some to make applesauce or apple pie. It's always nice to share. The next thing you can do is you can feed it to animals. We are very lucky in the Berkshires to have a lot of local farms with animals, and they love to give them food scraps for feed because it saves them money and it's a healthier alternative to grain. Then we can compost our food scraps, which is a very amazing, such a good way to reuse the nutrients in the food. It's called carbon sequestration, which means that it's very good for the environment. And it's just all around just a fantastic alternative to bringing it to the landfill. You also could bring compost to an industrial composting site, but we don't have many in the area, and that does cost about the same amount as if you were to pay somebody to pick up trash. So composting in your backyard is just a really cost-effective way to reduce your waste. So when you're thinking about compost at home, we're thinking about most of the time we're thinking about some of the scraps that we might have on our plate. You don't always have to just think what is left over on my plate can go in the compost bin though. You can also think of veggie scraps if you're dicing up a carrot and you don't want the stem. You can think of coffee grounds once you've made your delicious coffee. You can use apple cores, banana peels. I think that's French fries there. It could also be pasta. Sometimes it gets confusing. You can compost bread. We'll talk about bread in a second when we talk about meat and dairy. But you can also compost eggshells, and you can compost thicker things like the watermelon rind. When it comes to the watermelon rind and eggshells, I'm just going to go to the next slide to talk about those. You want to break them down into smaller pieces because it's going to be easier to decompose. But otherwise, they are welcome in a compost bin. You can put in bread and cooked foods, and the reason why you can put them in is because they still have the basic components of what is a compostable material, which is organic material. So even though the nutrients might have been cooked out of it, or the bread might not be as nutrient rich as, say, the core of a tomato, they still do have the components needed to be a compostable material. So our nuts, we talked about veggies and fruit and coffee grounds. What you do want to keep out of your compost is meat and dairy. And the reason why you want to keep those out is because they start to create a smell when they break down. When you are composting outside, your compost bin is actually going to heat up, which is a fantastic sign that you're doing a great job. A warm compost bin means that there's chemical reactions that are happening that are breaking down the food waste material. So what happens is when your veggies are breaking down, the nutrients are mixing with the other materials in the compost bin, creating that rich soil. But for meat and dairy, and also fish, it doesn't get hot enough to break it down. Think about how hot you have to cook steak and chicken, but how warm you have to, how hot you have to cook spinach. It's a completely different temperature range. So you want to avoid cheese and dairy, meat and dairy, fish in your compost bin, because if they break down outside, they could potentially attract some critters such as the raccoon there. And we'll talk about critters in a second when we talk about how to add compost to your outdoor bin. So we're just going to do a little quick quiz, and you can unmute yourself if you'd like. So out of all of these items, which do you think do belong in the compost bin? Which do you think do not belong in the compost bin? And we have kind of mixed it up here. So we have almonds in the top left. We have some, looks like a seed nut mix in a plastic bag. Got a block of cheese, some leafy greens, some citrus rind. We also have some chicken bones from, it looks like someone might have enjoyed some chicken, like for a Super Bowl. We got a ketchup packet, some pasta. The confusing one for some might be the compostable fork there near the top right, banana peel. So does anyone want to join in and say what they think may or may not go in the compost bin?
Hi, I'm Toby. I would say that does not go in the compost bin are the chicken bones, the ketchup packet, the cheese, the stuff in the plastic bag, unless you were to just dump it into the compost and throw the bag in the trash. And I don't know about the French fries. I guess if those are cooked, be acceptable. So not acceptable to me would be the chicken bones, the ketchup, the cheese, and the plastic.
Thank you. I think you said your name was Toby. Thanks, Toby. That's fantastic. So you caught most of them. We definitely don't want to put plastic in our compost bin. Plastic can break down into smaller pieces of plastic. So that's why we see, cigarette butts, they slowly degrade over time on the side of the road if someone litters them. But they actually only become smaller pieces of plastic. So they're not good for our soil. We don't want to plant our veggies or fertilize our lawn with microplastic. So great catch on the ketchup packet. We also don't want to put those meat bones in there. Following the same rule that we don't want to compost meat and dairy. The bones fall into that meat category. The one thing that we also don't want to put into our compost bin is industrial compostable ware, such as silverware made with corn. Like I believe Alata in Pittsfield provides corn-based spoons. Those are not friendly for our compost bin, following the same rule as meat and dairy. Does not get hot enough for those to break down. So we really need to avoid having any industrial compostable ware, such as that fork on the picture. Actually, there we go. We don't want to put that in our compost bin. So you do actually have a few
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please, yes. You want me to go back?
Sure. I can remember though. So it's Francie. If you took the ketchup out of the ketchup pack, would that be compostable?
Absolutely. So you can absolutely empty the ketchup, empty the seeds out of the plastic. You don't want the plastic inside. Sometimes I use this slide with students in high school because they think, oh, plastic is biodegradable. And so they throw the whole thing in when really you need to take your time and put the ketchup, the nuts and seeds in the compost bin, and then make sure that the plastic does not go in there. That's a great question.
Can I ask something, Mary?
Yep.
In terms of eggshells, I've heard different, stories on that. Some people say yes and some people say no. Do you know why they would say no?
So as somebody who owns chickens and has plenty of farm fresh eggs right in my backyard, I say yes to eggs. And the reason why is because if you crush them small enough, they will break down. But some people, they don't break down fast enough and they don't want to deal with that in their soil. So while the orange peel would break down and not be recognizable when the compost is ready, the eggshells might still be recognizable. But if that's the case, you can still use it in your garden. You can still take it with the eggshell still, recognizable and visible in your compost and plant it because they add so much value to your garden. And sometimes people say that eggs could also attract unwanted visitors into your compost bin. If you are in an area where you are extremely worried about attracting raccoons or squirrels because they seem to be very rambunctious in your neighborhood, then you can just skip the eggshells in your compost bin. But as somebody, again, I'm surrounded by woods, I have chickens. I never have any critters other than my chickens going in my compost bin. So I personally am not worried about it, but it's also you tailor your compost bin to how you to what you need.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So you do have a couple of options for compost bins outside. You can build your own. I have one similar to the one on the left because we do have a lot of straw and hay with our compost, with our chicken coop, I mean. So you can build your own with pallets or wood. We're going to talk about the New Age composter in a minute, which is a fantastic option for having a movable compost bin. And Karen will tell you how relatively easy that is to set up. You can also buy some online that are like enclosed, made of hard, rigid plastic, etc. You can buy them at Tractor Supply, but they're, you're getting into the hundreds of dollars in that case. So you gotta figure out what's right for you and what your needs are for your compost bin. Before we get to Karen's part, I am going to say that when you're bringing your compost outside, so we talked about what can go inside the compost bin in the kitchen, which, by the way, you can put French fries in your compost. You want to avoid putting grease in your compost. Like if you're cooking bacon, you don't want to put the bacon grease in your compost bin because it's, again, going to attract unwanted visitors. But you can put like French fries in there if it's like mixed up. You don't want to have a greasy compost bin. It's good to have a mix of everything in your compost bin if you have some things that are a little tricky. So when you're bringing your compost outside, you have your kitchen compost, your rinds, your veggies, etc. And when you bring it outside, you're going to want to add some sort of brown material. A brown material, for example, could be wood chips or shredded paper, straw, or brush from your yard. My favorite thing to add to my compost bin are leaves, because I can almost always find leaves, in the nearby woods, or when I'm raking in the fall, I pile them up near my compost bin to use all year round. They already contain the decomposers needed for the compost bin, and they just make a fantastic soil. You can add shredded newspaper or paper. You want to avoid too much of paper if you can, but it's certainly something you can add. And then, of course, you can always splurge on buying wood chips or straw if you'd like, to make the compost a little bit more diverse in what kind of brown material you add. But you always want to add 1 part green to 3 parts brown. So if you have a small bucket of compost from the kitchen, you want 3 buckets worth of brown material to add. And this is every time you're going out to empty your compost bin. You just add your green material, and then you take your rake or fork or your pitchfork or your shovel, and you just add your browns on top. You can give it a little fluff or mix, and then you're done. So you do want to turn or fluff your compost with a shovel or a pitchfork every 1 to 3 months. That just gives the compost more air and shakes it around a little bit. Of course, you want to do this with the compost that you can reach. So if it's a full bin and you can only mix or fluff the top half, then that works. That's doing the job. Once full, with the composter Karen's going to talk about, you can actually move the bin and just let the old pile cook. Meaning, we were talking about how it gets really hot. That's and another term to referring to it decomposing is it's cooking. So you can let it do its thing while you move your bin and continue composting in a new area. And then your compost, or what they call black gold soil, is usually ready in 6 to 12 months, depending on how much compost you have outside. And it's actually kind of funny. Your bin could be full in 1 month, and then 2 months later it'll be half full because of how much cooking is actually happening, especially during the summer, in your compost bin. So it's actually quite an incredible process. And of course, the black gold soil is going to be the furthest down in your bin, because that's where, that's the oldest material that's decomposed the longest, and so on. I'm going to pass it off to Kathy, who's going to talk about Pittsfield Compost drop-off program. Kathy, I'm going to unmute you.
Oh,
there you go.
Great. All right, so this webinar is hosted by the community group Pittsfield Compost. The initiative started a year ago and was born out of the desire to simply get the ball rolling on community composting made available to Pittsfield residents on a no-budget scheme. It's based, on the one hand, on finding organizations who already compost, or for whom it would be the next natural step, and have the capacity to accept contributions from the public. And on the other hand, finding the Pittsfield residents who want to compost but currently don't for whatever reason, and let them know that they can do it in an easy communal way. Our first participants participating organization is the Giving Garden off Valentine Road, down the road from Taconic High School and the entrance to Onoda Lake. They do great work by donating all the vegetables they grow to local pantries. That project is overseen by Gordon Clark, another founding member, who's not with us today because it's spring and he's too busy being outdoors in the fresh air, turning the handle on that composting barrel you see in the picture on the screen. So if you would like to compost but don't want to do it at your home, we would be happy to hear from you. You can register to take your compost to the Giving Garden by emailing Mary at the address mary@berkshirezerowaste.org. If you know of any organizations who might be interested in accepting public compost contributions, we would love to hear about that at that same email address.
I'd also like to add, if I could, that the community garden located at the Christian Center is not accepting donations yet, drop-offs yet, but that is in the works, and at some point we expect that to open. And so that would make 2 locations in Pittsfield where you'd be able to drop it off, and we'll keep you posted.
So passing it off to Karen. Karen, do you want to talk to us about how you are starting your composting program at your house and how you went about buying this your compost bin?
You mean how I got involved in all of this in the first place? Okay, so basically I'm a newbie. I don't really have a place at my house set up for it, or haven't up until this point. So I have been bringing it to the Giving Garden. I basically just use my table scraps and stuff like that. I've learned a lot today about how to prepare it properly for getting it to your compost bin, which I'll talk about in a minute. One of the things, I keep a bowl next to like where I'm preparing my food. I've got a like newspaper kind of sort of lining it. I just throw all of my stuff in there, and when at the end of the meal, when I really want to get rid of the garbage on my table, I bring it out back. I would start bringing it out back to my compost bin, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute. Somebody just went on chat, but I'm going to continue going right along. And so that's basically where I'm at with how I've getting and breaking myself into composting. I'm one of those people who have tried it in the past and not had much success. So I have a lot of fine tuning to do. But one of the things that's definitely making this fine tuning easier is having a compost bin that I can bring it to. Now, these bins are offered by the city of Pittsfield. You can reach Jim McGrath at the phone number there, 499-9344, to purchase the compost bins at City Hall. The original cost to the city is $58, but through different grants that have been given and different cost-cutting factors and the like, they've brought it down to $25 to you and me when we go get this. There's a couple, before we go to the actual demonstration putting it together, there's a couple points I'd like to make, if I could. It comes with an instruction pack. Read the instructions. It makes it so much easier. And this is what's known as a wing clip. This is very important. You'll see what I mean when you get it, but it makes life so much easier. They're wing clips. You want to go to the next? There. You want to go to the next slide and I can start my demonstration?
I do want to mention real quick, Karen, that you don't have to be a city resident to get this bin. So if you're from Lanesboro, Stockbridge, North Adams, call this number. He's not going to ID you. They have so many of these bins. They pre-ordered them with the grant money. So all you have to do is give them $25, check made out to the city of Pittsfield, and then they'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are they still doing it right now?
Yes.
Okay.
They will connect. I picked this up from him, maybe 2 weeks ago. You do need to call ahead, and he will tell you, you know, you can arrange a time and a place and stuff, and he will meet you there. And he even graciously put it in my car for me. We kept our social distance and wore our masks.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's a good time to do it, actually, in the beginning of the season and stuff. I lost my video. Where did my video go? Oh, I need my video. It's very important, you see. Okay, so that would be me. And the very first thing I did was I opened this up and laid it out flat for a while and let it, because it's very stiff plastic. So I let it lay out flat for a while. We started in the backyard. It didn't, the sun warmed it up really nice, but it was terrible for videoing. So we moved it out to the front yard. I started in the back, moved it to the front. And before we actually get into it, I do want to explain the difference in the sizing. So, because we're going to be referring to the third hole and the fourth hole. So the first hole is the largest of the bin sizes, and the fourth hole is the smallest of the bin sizes. This is important because as we go along, we're going to be constantly referring to which set of holes to use. Now, my video is getting ahead of me. Do I need to talk fast to catch up to where I'm at, or do you want to restart it for me?
You want me to go back to the beginning?
Yeah, just go back just a little bit and then I will jump right in, because I had to explain the sizes. So what I did was starting with the very first hole, and I'm counting in. This is my husband John helping me, and I'm counted down. This one is set on 3 holes, so I counted down for 3 holes. The smaller it is, the more stable it is. Now you take that little wing clip, and from the inside you push it through the hole. Like I said, I counted off the 3 holes, lined up the 3 holes. You push it through. I would strongly suggest this is a 2-person thing. It's just, that's the way it is. Earlier I mentioned I might be having a 20-month-old joining me at some point, and he is here. So you might hear him now and then in the background, but that's okay, he's cute. You might even see him if he climbs up into my lap. So basically, we put the 2 clips in to hold it, and I set it to one side. Now, if you're using the largest setting, you need to make that brace. You just simply use one of those clips, put the brace together, and you would set that down. That would be the first thing you would put together and set down on the ground. The next one would be, boy, it's just, okay, come on. I'm talking faster than the video's going. I set it to one side because, as I said, it's on the third, and it does not need that brace on the bottom. On the first and the second, it does. On the third and the fourth, it doesn't. This is the next piece that you put together, and it's the base of the bin. Again, you count off 3 holes. I found it easier to count it off from the top. Line up the top hole first. Pulled it into 3 holes, lined it up. Now, if you want to, once you line it up, and if you're really multi-talented, you can reach through and actually put the clip through the outside one first. But it took a little practice to do it. I know I make it look so easy. Then you put your 2 clips in and hold it together. Yeah, I was momentarily distracted there by the little
And
one's name was
Karen,
yeah.
you mentioned that, you know, to us earlier that it's very stiff plastic.
Yes.
So yeah, I saw how you needed to really kind of push that. Make
Oh,
the
you
shape.
really need to struggle to pull it over into place.
Cool.
And then you get it all lined up. And this is where the 2 hands come in place, because if you get it all lined up, and it's hard to hold it there and put the pin through at the same time because it's stiff. But as you can see, once you reach that point, you put the bin over it. Now you got the bottom in place with the bin around it. Now it comes time to make the cover. Now the first thing you're going to do is tie off your string. It's a very thick piece of, I lost my video. So we'll just keep right on going. So the string is a very thick piece of string. It's about as thick around as my little finger is. And you have to tie it, there you go. And you have to tie it securely and kind of put it up into place. And you really have to play with it and force it into there because the hole's not really big enough. But if you manipulate it around and stuff, then you can keep going. And again, you're going to line up the 3 holes. Three is the number, and the number shall be 3, not 2, not 4, but 3. Unless, of course, you want 2 or 4. That's a shout out to all of our Monty Python fans out there. My husband was so patient with me. It's my daughter, by the way, is my camera person. She's holding the phone.
So,
She's shouting
Karen,
ideas from the sidelines.
Karen, why do you have a bottom cone and a top cone?
The bottom cone is for the bottom. The top cone is for the top. No. Okay. I'm not exactly sure the reason for the question. The bottom cone is actually helps to provide a space between the bottom and the ground to allow, it's easier for the whole process to continue if it has that space under there. And you can also accomplish it by, putting in milk, plastic containers or something like that to fill up that space. The top one is so that as you put everything into place, you can put the top down and it just kind of helps to weigh it down and keep it compact and keep the stuff you don't want in there out of there. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome.
So that's the end of that video.
So once you get that all put together, you can choose, you can either put it together where your spot is and then just they provide you with 3 stakes and there's holes around the bottom. So you can stake that whole thing right into place wherever you want it. It works very well. I've had it staked in now for about 10 days and it's not blown over or anything. So it's pretty stable. And it's really worth it. It's a good investment. It's a great way to make that first step into composting possible, if you will. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Cool.
It's Shauna. What is the advantage? What would be the major difference between having this as opposed to a spinning one that you could purchase? Is there advantage to either one?
So the spinning one, remember how I talked about how you have to like turn it or fluff your compost? When you have a spinning one, it automatically does that. So a spinning one not only takes it off the ground and is more self-contained, but it allows you to mix your compost around and basically re-aerate the compost. So it doesn't get stagnant. And it keeps nice, loose and fluffy and good. This is a good alternative if you're on a low budget and you want something that's easy to move, because you can create a compost pile, then take the stakes out, move the black bin. You can shimmy the bottom cone out with a rake or a shovel, and then you can start a new compost bin while your other one cooks. Whereas if you have a spinning one and it's full, but it's not ready for it to be soil, then you might have to go get another spinning one or do a second bin.
Thank you.
And Karen, what has been your experience with where, or if anyone has a suggestion on where to place it? Does it smell so it should be far away from the house? Should it not be next to like a fence? Like, are there suggestions in the instructions on where to place it so you can access it? I guess especially in the winter, if you have to do stuff in the winter.
Well, my recommendation, I'm sorry, Karen, do you mind if I take that?
Oh, nope. What I was going to say though was, first of all, there really shouldn't be too much odor associated with it, because if we're only composting what we should be composting, then there's nothing that's going to be producing a lot of those strong odors that would attract. Remember, there's no meat, no dairy, that type of thing, for just those reasons. Other than that, I would think a weather protected area. Take it away, Mary.
Exactly what Karen said. Sometimes when we go to farmers markets, like the Pittsfield Farmers Market, to showcase composting, we bring like the stages of compost. And sometimes people are like, what is this that you have in front of you? And we're like, oh, this is compost. They're like, there's no smell, there's no bugs. Like, this is incredible. This is compost. So if you follow the rules of no meat, no dairy, you shouldn't have any smell, or very, very little smell to the point where you can't sense it. Also, you don't want it close to your home if you can avoid that, just because there are a lot of bugs. If you want to put it next to your vegetables, you can do that, just so when the compost is ready to be soil, you can put it right into your vegetable garden. Or during the winter, if it's too far away for you, if it's like in the back corner of your yard, or if you're sharing this with a neighbor, you can use a 5-gallon pail on your back porch with a lid. Make sure it has a secured lid, and dump it in there. It'll freeze, and then when it's full, then you can bring the whole pail over to the compost bin, dump it there. That way you're not making a trip every other day and it's freezing. It's not going to smell, it's not going to decompose, it's just going to freeze there. That's a really good option for some people. And also, if you don't have a lot of compost, you could even put the 5-gallon bucket underneath your sink. And the rule is, if you have a 5-gallon bucket under your sink, as soon as moisture builds up on the lid, that's when it's ready to go outside. Because as soon as it starts to release moisture, that's when it starts to break down. And that's when you don't want it in your house anymore. But really good question. I love that question.
Yes.
Mary,
Yeah.
I have a question. It's Kathy. I was curious about whether the spinning barrel, it breaks the compost down faster than the standing one.
Compost will break down at a speed that relates to however many decomposers are in it. So if you have a spinning compost bin and you put the rich in decomposer, like the leaves in your spinning bin, then those leaves are going to be really powerful and break down all those decomposers, the bacteria, etc. Is going to break down your compost really well, whether it's in your turning bin, or free, just like in this new age composter, just free to the air. If you put wood chips, they don't have as many decomposers in them, so it's going to break down slower, and the wood chips are also much bigger, so those are going to take a while to decompose. So it really just matters on what your brown material is, and also how small your green material is. If your compost bin from your kitchen is half eggshells and half French fries, that's not exactly really nutrient-rich stuff that's going to break down fast. So it's all about what goes into your compost bin, and making sure that you stick to that rule of 1 to 3, 1 part green to 3 part brown.
Well, thank you.
May I ask a question? This is Toby. I'm wondering if a composter, it makes any difference if it's in the sun or the shade.
If your compost bin is in the sun, it's going to get warmer, which means it's going to cook faster. But that doesn't mean it can't be in the shade. If it's in the shade, it just means that it's going to do its thing without that extra help of the sun.
And what did you mean by weather protected? Like, how weather protected?
You really don't need to weather protect your bin. Some people don't want a lot of water getting in their compost, because then that means that it's going to be really heavy to move later. For me, like, mine's just open exposed, and I just use a pitchfork a lot to fluff it up and to make sure there's a lot of air in there. If in the winter you don't want this black bin getting pushed over by ice or snow or something like that, then you can put it in a weather protected area. But it doesn't necessarily need to be protected. The compost doesn't need to be protected from the weather.
And Can I just add in a comment from Julie? Um, Julie added that her spinner has 2 compartments inside, so she can do 2 piles at once. And she adds organic fish emulsion to help break it down faster. And she said her eggshells are ground up in a special cup I used from my bullet. So there you go. Thank you for that contribution, Julie.
Yeah, great, Julia. So be creative. You know, I crushed up the eggshells with my hands. If you really want to grind them up because you really don't want those pesky eggshells sticking around for a long time, you can use, she's using her bullet. You can use, put them in a bag and crush them by punching them or something. But, you can be creative. You can also add any type of, I'm going to say manure, but she's using organic fish emulsion, which is something you can buy. I've bought that before. It's stinky if you spill it. So, but these are all things that can accelerate. I caution you from purchasing anything online that says you need it to compost it, because really you just need that brown material, that rich decomposers from outside. To help you break it down. So you don't necessarily need to buy anything, but there's certainly tools that you can use to make it go faster.
Mary?
Yes.
Marjorie has asked if it needs to be watered down during dry spells.
Actually, your compost is 80% water. The compost on your and your kitchen counter is about 80% water. So it's unlikely you will ever have to add water.
Cool.
And then Shauna says, this is awesome with the fish all ready to throw in the garden.
Yeah.
All great questions and comments. Thank you.
Yes.
We are more than welcome to answer more questions that you may have. Don't think of it as funny or weird. We're here to talk it out, and of course I do have our contact info in the last page, so you can email us too if you're shy. So continue to use the chat function for questions. I'm just going to start our ending poll. So question number 3 is similar to a question from the beginning. Now that you've reviewed what is compostable, what do you know is compostable in your backyard? So the answers, and this is multiple choice: coffee grounds, eggshells, fruit and vegetables, meat and dairy, plastic packaging. I think I lost an answer from this one. The first one had 6. Oh, it lost the bread and cooked foods one, but all right. So most of us have answered. So yay, most of us know that these are things that can go in our backyard compost bin. We might change it up depending if we don't want eggshells in there, or if we don't have coffee grounds, that's okay too. And then our final poll is, now that you've learned about composting at home, what do you think your next steps are going to be? Do you think you're going to continue composting if you are now? Are you going to start composting if you haven't? Are you going to learn more? Are you going to reach out to see, hey, maybe I can do that composting drop-off they were talking about? Or is there something else that you might do, perhaps not compost, but go down another route? Ooh, we got a good question for Marjorie. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. So before I get to Marjorie's question, it looks like most of us are gonna continue composting, start composting. Someone else is gonna explore another route. So Marjorie's question is on a practical matter. Do you keep your brown matter, say the leaves, in a different pile to add as you add the green? Yes, in the fall, I rake all my leaves next to my compost bin, so they're there for the rest of the year or until I run out, just to add. I don't keep my shovel in that pile just because I don't want my shovel to get rusty or ruined or whatever, but you can keep a pitchfork or a shovel nearby, and just every time you dump your compost bin, you add 3 shovelfuls of your brown material. At schools, we recommend a covering over your brown material, because for the little kids, if they're adding the food waste from their cafeteria, we don't want them to have to shovel heavy straw or heavy wood chips into their compost bin. So you can cover up your brown material to prevent the brown material from getting too heavy. She continues to say, what happens when you run out of brown? We don't have a lot of leaves. So what I do, or what I recommend to people who don't have a lot of leaves, is during fall cleanup time, people will put out leaves in clear plastic bags on the front of their yard. And that is a sign that those leaves are clean, they don't use pesticides, fertilizers, chemical herbicides, or anything. So that is a sign to you that clear bags with leaves, for the most part, don't have any chemicals added to them. So you can always take a clear bag of leaves from someone's front curb. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can knock on their door or ask them while they're doing that, putting them out, say, hey, can I have those leaves? That way they're in a bag and you can transport them and keep them. You can purchase a bale of straw. I believe it's between $10 and $15 at Tractor Supply. And straw is very, it's compact in that bale. So when you open it, it explodes. So you don't need 10 bales of straw. One bale of straw can probably get you through at least a summer. If you have a family of 5, a summer, it's just you, it can probably last you a year, if not longer, just one bale of straw from Tractor Supply. You can also always use mulch. You can use brush, and you can use shredded newspaper. We all get the Berkshire Shopper's Guide, I think, and sometimes it gets too much. And so you can shred that up. That can be your brown material. And you can, but also be creative. Look online, Google, browns or something like that. Ask a neighbor, hey, are you, clearing out any, are you doing any yard cleanup this spring? Can I have some of your stuff that you're raking out? Sometimes we have those tall flowers that die and we don't need their stems from last year. It's brown in color. Let's use it as brown materials. What are your thoughts on adding tea bags to compost? Concern with plastic in the bag makeup. So I specifically use Traditional Medicine tea, which is, it says certified compostable on their packaging. So that way I'm not worried about it being compostable. It's either made of a paper, cotton material, and it has, it's not sealed with a glue. And it's tied, the bag is sealed with a string, with the actual string. So it's just perfect for compost. If it's like Tiavana and Harvey and Sons, those are plastic. You can't get away from it. You could cut open the bag, put the tea leaves in, and then throw the bag away. That's the A++ method, but really you just want to throw them away if you don't know that they're not made with plastic. There's only 5 brands that are popular that have that are compostable. I don't know them off the top of my head because I don't think all of them are available in our area. But I know that Traditional Medicines certainly is compostable. Another question is, can you compost used tea grounds leaves loose, and is grass considered brown material? So you can compost anything that was cooked or boiled or whatever. It's still organic in makeup. It doesn't have as many nutrients, of course, because we took it out for our tea, but you can still compost them loose. Yep, that's great. And then grass is considered brown material when it's brown. So think about that greens to brown. If we cut our grass right now and it's that fresh pile of green, that's full of nitrogen. So we don't want too much nitrogen in our compost bin. So if you rake it into a pile next to your compost bin, then it'll become brown over time. It'll actually lose the nitrogen and it'll be our brown material. So you can certainly use grass cuttings, but not fresh grass cuttings. I just want to thank everybody. We have a really great group here today. Fantastic questions, things I didn't even think people were going to ask, but Karen and I and Kathy, we've been working on this for a couple weeks now, and we're so excited to talk to people about this. This PowerPoint is available if you want. If you want to email me, this is the final slide. Here's my email if you'd like to talk to us. You can ask for the PowerPoint slide if you'd like. We also have been recording this, so we will be putting it on YouTube using the Berkshire Environmental Action Team YouTube. So we'll put that on our Facebook. But of course, email us. You don't need to be on social media to get this information. Caroline says, thank you. Of course, Caroline, you're very welcome. I'm going to stick around for the next few minutes. I think Karen and Kathy have to hop off, but you guys are feel free. You can go now. You are compost experts. And if anybody has any questions, I'm sticking around, so you can feel free to ask them.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was brilliant. I enjoyed participating.
Yeah, me too.
Bye-bye.
It was a lot of fun. I am going to run. The little Sagan's getting antsy, so I am going to run. See you all again.
Bye, Karen. Bye, Kathy.
Reach out to me if you want any help or anything. You have any questions? You can always find me on Facebook. Bye.
You're welcome, Shauna. Shauna, you're muted. I don't know if you have any questions. I can unmute you if you'd like. I unmuted. Oh, can I? Oh, it doesn't look like I can unmute you. Unless I was playing mute tab. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It was telling me I couldn't because of the screen sharing. I'm still a bit confused. Obviously, I want to go to City Hall, and that would be my first choice, is to purchase this that you've suggested. But I'm wondering if, like, how will I know what I can use just because it looks like good black gold at the bottom? I'm wondering if to purchase this thing from City Hall or get a spinning one.
Yeah.
It's
so it depends on how dedicated you're going to be
okay.
to composting, and how much volume you're going to generate. So are you just by yourself generating the compost?
Absolutely not. I have 2 teenage boys that never stop eating.
Okay, so you could get the spinning one, but keep in mind that you might need a second one.
Yep.
She said that the other lady said that she had a 2-part one, but it's still a limited amount of volume.
Okay.
Having 2 is great because you know this one's cooking over here, or this is the one we're adding to, and then this one's done. We empty it. We are adding to this one. That one's cooking. So I love having 2 because it always gives me, it's not really a top down. Like I don't have to try to get the compost out of the bottom and then keep adding to the top. With the one from City Hall, it's low cost, $25. And Jim McGrath from the city of Pittsfield, I work with him a lot. He's so friendly, and he was actually going to come to the webinar today, but I don't think he was able to make it. He, will meet you pretty much like any day around lunchtime. And you can get this bin. It's $25. It's cheap. It's a great starter. So if you're like, oh, I'm not so sure, about composting or how well it's going to go at my house, it's budget friendly. It's really easy to put together. I actually, Jeffrey, our friend Jeffrey is joining, but our webinar is over, Jeffrey. I'm sorry you missed it. So you can actually buy the compost bin for cheap. You can move it, so how I was talking about how you can have like the cooking pile and then the add pile. You can pick the black bin up with the stakes, get the bottom cone out, move it, and so you have this cooking pile, which is just like a pile of dirt. It's not as pretty, of course. It's like a big black hunk, whereas like a turning one, it looks kind of nice, and you can station it in your yard where it would look nice. We use the turning one at the Given Garden because a lot of people walk by. We don't want like an awkward system. We want something that's like easy to move and manipulate. Depending on the window size, might be difficult or easy to get the brown material in along with the green. And then with teenagers, you just want to be careful that they are also doing the browns part, because with the students that I work with in high schools and middle schools, in elementary schools, they love going outside to bring the greens out, the green food, but then they don't add the brown, which still becomes compost, but it doesn't have it's not as nutritious, nutrient dense, with the variety of stuff, for the soil. It's ready when it's indistinguishable. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
get to this, like, you're gonna get to this kind of, it's gonna be black. It's gonna be like black dirt. It will almost look like mud, depending on how wet it has been. Mine are under trees. It doesn't rain directly on top of my bin, but if it does, that's okay. It just means that you have, wet soil to start your garden with. Like once you really start getting into it, like you just like love your compost pile. It's like this like weird thing that you get with a pile of dirt, and and you just like, when you go to add it to your garden, you just like get this feeling like, whoa, like that was not trash. Like, and I put it in my garden. I didn't have to pay $8 for a bag of cow poop, or whatever. And it's just a really fulfilling process. And it's meant to be a learning experience, just because I might be a vegetarian and you might be a meatitarian, and what we add to our compost might be completely different. I might love coffee, might hate coffee, so coffee grounds are going to change the consistency, and coffee grounds can actually be a little bit oily. So, it's just a learning experience. And when in doubt, add browns. Just like
Okay.
put that on, because that's not going to hurt it. They break down naturally to begin with, out in the yard or whatever. So.
Well, I appreciate the experience, and I'm going to go clean up my kitchen from lunch and see what I put in there, to be honest with you, because I am very inspired. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your day. And
Thank you. Let us know how it goes.
Okay, I'll send you pics, Mabe. Thank you.
Bye. Jeffrey, I don't know if you're there, but our webinar ended. It started at 11.